Beverly's voice was shaking when she called. "Bradley, why is there a moving truck loading boxes from your house right now?" Before I could even process what she was telling me, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Across the restaurant table, my daughter Sharon exchanged a look with her husband Trevor. Then Trevor laughed. It wasn't the kind of laugh you make when something's funny. It was nervous, guilty, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He tried to cover it up with a cough, but I'd spent 35 years investigating insurance fraud. I knew what guilt sounded like. "My name is Bradley Coleman. I'm 68 years old, been retired for 3 years from my job as an insurance claims adjuster. My wife Diana passed from cancer 3 years ago, and these weekly Wednesday lunches with Sharon were supposed to keep me connected to family. Now, I was sitting in this overpriced farm-to-table restaurant in Scottsdale, watching my daughter's face and realizing someone was stealing from my house while I ate organic kale salad. "What did you say?" I asked Beverly, my grip tightening on the phone. "There's a big moving truck in your driveway," Beverly repeated. She's my neighbor of 15 years, used to work quality control at an aerospace plant. The woman notices everything. Professional crew, uniforms, the works. They're carrying boxes out of your house. I'm looking at them right now through my kitchen window. The restaurant noise faded away. My house. Diana's house. The place where 42 years of marriage memories lived. Someone was taking our things. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the polished concrete floor. Ice cubes scattered across the table from my knocked-over water glass. "Sharon, I have to go. Someone's breaking into the house." Here's what should have happened. My daughter should have gasped, grabbed her purse, offered to drive me home immediately. Her husband should have been reaching for his keys, asking if we needed to call 911. Instead, Sharon and Trevor shared that look again, the kind of look poker players exchange when they think no one's watching. And Trevor laughed again, that same guilty bark. "Dad, relax," Sharon said, not looking up from her phone where she'd been scrolling through Instagram. "It's probably just a delivery truck at the wrong address. You know how those GPS systems mess up in your neighborhood?" Trevor nodded too quickly. "Yeah, happens all the time. Remember when Amazon delivered that patio furniture to the wrong house? Let's just finish lunch and we can all drive over together. No need to panic." But I wasn't panicking. I was calculating. For 35 years, I'd made a living reading people, spotting the tells that separated honest claims from fraudulent ones. The way Trevor's eye twitched when he said, "wrong address." The way Sharon's voice got higher when she said, "relax." The way neither of them seemed surprised that someone was at my house with a moving truck. My 7-year-old grandson Neil looked up from his. Organic sweet potato fries, Diana's hazel eyes in a little boy's face. "Is someone taking Grandpa's stuff?" out of the mouths of babes. "No, sweetheart," Sharon said quickly, shooting me a look that said, "Don't scare the kid. It's just a mix-up." I left a 50 on the table, kissed Neil's forehead, and walked out of that restaurant knowing I wasn't just dealing with a burglary. I was dealing with betrayal. The drive home took forever and no time at all. Phoenix traffic crawled along Scottsdale Road, while my mind raced through possibilities. Someone had my security code. Someone knew I'd be out of the house for exactly 2 hours every Wednesday. Someone who knew my routines, my filing system, my vulnerabilities. Someone who'd been planning this for months. Beverly was waiting in my driveway when I pulled up, her phone ready with photos. "I got everything," she said. "The truck, the license plate, the crew, Phoenix Premier relocations. They loaded at least a dozen boxes, maybe more." The truck was gone, but I could see the tire marks on my concrete driveway, dark rubber streaks that looked like scars. My front door stood closed, everything looking normal from the outside. But I knew better. When someone violates your home, you can feel it in the air. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Jennifer Martinez and her partner, both young enough to be my grandchildren, took my statement with the patient condescension cops use on senior citizens. They checked the locks, found no signs of forced entry. They examined my security system, and that's when the first shoe dropped. "Mr. Coleman," Officer Martinez said, frowning at her tablet. "According to ADT's records, your system was disarmed yesterday at 2:47 p.m. using the master code. And this morning at 10:15 a.m., the system was disarmed again, also with the master code. We're showing authorized entry both times." Authorized! The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I haven't given my code to anyone, I started to say. But that wasn't true. I'd given it to Sharon last year when Diana was sick, when I needed help managing things during the worst of the treatments. I'd trusted my daughter completely because she was my daughter. The officers suggested I change my codes, recommended I inventory my belongings to see what was missing, and left with sympathetic smiles. They didn't say it, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought this was a family matter, probably my daughter just borrowing some things without asking. If I'd been a different kind of man, maybe I would have accepted that explanation. But I'd spent 4 decades following paper trails, connecting dots that criminals thought they'd hidden. I knew that crimes don't happen in isolation. They have patterns, histories, foundations built over time. After the police left, I walked through my house like a crime scene investigator. I wasn't looking for what was missing yet. I was looking for what was different, what was wrong, what told a story. The thieves thought they'd hidden. In my home office, everything looked almost normal. Almost. The chair was angled wrong by maybe 2 degrees. The pens in my holder were facing the opposite direction from how I always kept them. The thin layer of dust on my filing cabinet had finger streaks visible in the afternoon light, streaming through Diana's lace curtains. Someone had been here, someone who'd taken their time, who hadn't felt rushed or worried about getting caught. Someone comfortable enough in my house to spend time searching through my personal papers. My filing cabinet has 4 drawers, insurance paperwork in the top drawer, medical records in the second, financial documents in the third, property papers in the bottom. I've kept the same system for 30 years. Diana used to tease me about it, said I organize files like I was preparing for an audit. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the folder labeled Property Documents. It felt too light in my hands. Half the papers were missing. The original deed to my house. Gone. The title insurance policy Diana and I had purchased in 1985. Gone. The home equity line of credit paperwork we'd taken out 15 years ago to pay for her cancer treatments and paid off completely 3 years before she died. Gone. But sitting right there in the front of the folder, like it belonged there, was a single sheet of paper I'd never seen before. A quitclaim deed dated 3 months ago, March 15th to be exact, transferring ownership of my $875,000 house to something called Coleman Family Holdings, LLC. My signature at the bottom, notarized by someone named Patricia Stone, witnessed by 2 people whose names I didn't recognize. The signature looked like mine. Hell, it looked exactly like mine. But I'd never signed this document. I'd never heard of Coleman Family Holdings, LLC. And on March 15th, according to my calendar, I'd been at Dr. Peterson's office getting my annual physical exam. Sharon had driven me to that appointment. She'd insisted. On driving, actually, said she was worried about me handling the fasting for the blood work. Said she'd rather be safe than sorry. We'd left the house at 8:30 a.m. and didn't get back until after 1 p.m. because she'd suggested lunch afterward to celebrate my clean bill of health. She'd known I'd be out of the house for over 4 hours that day. My hands were shaking, but my mind was working like it hadn't worked since I retired. Quitclaim deeds are simple documents. They transfer ownership of property without any money changing hands. They're common in estate planning, used between family members, usually legitimate. They're also a favorite tool of real estate fraudsters and people running elder abuse schemes. Someone had forged my signature and stolen my house, and that someone had known exactly when I'd be gone, had access to my filing system, had felt comfortable spending time in my office going through my papers. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a legal pad, doing what I'd done for 35 years. I followed the money. The Maricopa County Recorder's Office keeps property records online. Within 10 minutes, I confirmed my worst fears. According to official county records, my house had been transferred to Coleman Family Holdings, LLC on March 15th. The LLC itself had been registered in Delaware 6 months ago, its actual ownership hidden behind the corporate privacy laws that state is famous for. Next, I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. The results made my stomach clench like someone had punched me in the gut. 3 months ago, someone had taken out a $150,000 home equity line of credit against my property. The lender was Western States Credit Union. The loan showed as current, meaning payments were being made on time, but not by me. I'd never applied for this loan, never signed any paperwork, never received any money, never made any payments. I logged into my bank accounts. My pension deposits were arriving normally every month. Social Security payments, correct to the penny. The investment accounts Diana and I had built over 40 years were untouched. On the surface, everything looked fine, but I knew better than to trust surfaces. I pulled up Western States Credit Union's website and navigated to their online banking portal. Using my Social Security number and some educated guessing about security questions, I managed to access the account. It was there, all right. $150,000 dispersed in chunks over the past 8 months. The money had been transferred immediately to accounts at different banks. The payments were being made from those same external accounts. Minimum payments only, just enough to keep the loan current and avoid triggering any red flags. Classic fraud behavior. Bleed the victim dry while maintaining the appearance that everything's normal. Keep the payments current so the bank doesn't look too closely. Extract maximum value, then disappear before anyone notices the house of cards falling down. But who was they? The Delaware LLC was a dead end without subpoena power. The accounts receiving the money were at banks where I had no access. I needed help from someone who knew how to dig deeper, someone who understood the system better than any civilian could. I spent the next 3 hours going through every piece of mail I'd received in the past year, looking for anything unusual, anything that might give me a clue about who was behind this. I found it buried in a stack of mail from 4 months ago, mixed in with insurance offers and grocery store coupons. A letter from Arizona Notary Services on their official letterhead, thanking me for my appointment on March 15th to have documents notarized. The letter hoped I was satisfied with the service provided by Patricia Stone, their mobile notary who had visited my home. I had never scheduled a notary. I had never met anyone named Patricia Stone. And on March 15th, I was getting blood drawn at Dr. Peterson's office while Sharon sat in the waiting room, flipping through magazines and checking her phone. The pieces clicked together like tumblers in a lock. Sharon had known I'd be out of the house for hours. She had my security code from when Diana was sick. She knew my filing system, knew where I kept important papers, knew I was trusting enough to never suspect my own daughter of robbing me blind. But I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof that would hold up in court. The next morning, I called Carl Rodriguez. We'd worked together for 15 years when he was in the transportation coordination office at the insurance company before he retired and started his own private investigation business. Carl was the guy who could find patterns in shipping manifests that revealed organized freight theft. If anyone could help me unravel this mess, it was him. Bradley, Carl's voice was warm when he answered. Good to hear from you. How have you been holding up? Not great, Carl. I need your help. With something. Can we meet today? An hour later, I was sitting in Carl's office in downtown Phoenix, a cramped space above a bail bondsman's office that smelled like coffee and cigarettes. Carl looked older than his 65 years, gray beard neatly trimmed, eyes still sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He listened without interruption while I told him everything. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Bradley, he said finally, everything you're describing points to elder financial abuse by a family member. It's more common than people think, and it almost always involves someone the victim trusts completely. The fact that they used your security code, knew your filing system, and scheduled the notary for a day when you'd be out of the house tells me this was planned carefully by someone in your inner circle. I know, I said. I just need help proving it. Carl nodded slowly. Here's what we're going to do. First, we subpoena the records from that notary service. Patricia Stone will have to testify about who actually appeared at your house that day. Second, we're going to pierce the corporate veil on that Delaware LLC. I have contacts who specialize in exactly this kind of work. Third, we trace where that $150,000 went after it left the credit union. Money always leaves a trail. He paused, meeting my eyes with sympathy. And fourth, we do all of this without Sharon knowing. You need to keep acting normal around her until we have everything we need. Can you do that? I thought about Sharon's face at the restaurant, that flash of fear she'd tried to hide behind concern. I've been acting normal around criminals my whole career. I can do it a little longer. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I continued our Wednesday lunches sitting across from Sharon and Trevor, making small talk about Neil's first grade class and Trevor's supposedly booming equipment maintenance business. I smiled when Sharon showed me photos from a weekend trip to Sedona that must have cost $2,000. I nodded sympathetically when Trevor complained about cash flow problems and late-paying customers. Every night, Carl called with updates that peeled back another layer of betrayal. The notary, Patricia Stone, broke within hours of Carl's investigator showing up at her office. When confronted with evidence that she'd notarized fraudulent documents, she confessed everything. Sharon had been the one to hire her, had been the one to present the documents, had been the one to sign my name while Patricia pretended not to notice that the supposed Bradley Coleman was a 43-year-old woman who looked nothing like the photo on my driver's license. The Delaware LLC led to a local attorney named Glenn Parker, who specialized in creating shell companies for clients who wanted to hide asset ownership. When Carl's contacts pulled Parker's other client files through court records, Trevor's name appeared on a dozen other LLCs, most connected to failed business deals and at least one civil fraud judgment that had been quietly settled. And the money trail was devastating. The $150,000 had been transferred to Coleman Family Holdings, then immediately distributed like water flowing downhill. $45,000 to pay off Trevor's credit card debts from failed business ventures. $35,000 for the down payment on a vacation condo in Sedona that was titled in Sharon's name alone. $25,000 into day trading accounts that showed nothing but losses, money gambled away on cryptocurrency and penny stocks. $45,000 that had been withdrawn as cash over 6 months, gone without a trace. They had taken everything my house was worth and burned through most of it already. But worse than the money was what Carl found in Sharon's email accounts. She'd been in contact with a real estate agent about selling my house. They were planning to list it in 3 weeks for $850,000, using the fraudulent quitclaim deed to establish ownership. They were going to sell my home out from under me and pocket the proceeds, and I would have no legal standing to stop them because according to county records, I didn't own it anymore. I had to act fast. Carl explained his plan, and I realized why he'd been so successful at catching corporate thieves. It wasn't just about following the money. It was about understanding the psychology of people who steal it. We have enough evidence to nail them, Carl said, but I want more than just stopping them. I want to destroy their ability to do this to anyone else. That means getting them on record, admitting what they've done. 3 days later, I invited Sharon and Trevor to dinner at my house. I told them I wanted to discuss something important about my estate planning. I watched Sharon's face carefully when I said those words, and I saw it. That flash of greed she tried to hide behind daughterly concern. "Of course, Dad," she said, her voice sweet with practiced emotion. "We've actually been wanting to talk to you about that too." No, just to make sure everything's in order for the future. The future. She meant the future where I was dead and she was spending my money. I spent that afternoon preparing Diana's famous pot roast, the recipe I'd memorized over 40 years of marriage. I set the table with our wedding china, the good stuff we'd saved for special occasions that became fewer and fewer as we got older. I made everything as normal and comfortable as possible, because I knew this would be the last family dinner we'd ever have. They arrived at 6 p.m. sharp, Neil bouncing through my front door like he always did, running straight into my arms. For a moment, holding my grandson, I almost couldn't go through with it. This little boy was going to grow up knowing his mother was a criminal. That was a burden no child should carry. But I thought about other elderly people Sharon and Trevor might target next. I thought about the $150,000 they had already stolen, money Diana and I had saved penny by penny, over decades. I thought about them selling my house, erasing 42 years of memories for cash they'd blow on vacation condos and cryptocurrency. We sat down to dinner, and I let them guide the conversation. Sharon talked about how worried she was about me being alone in this big house. Trevor mentioned a lovely assisted living community he'd heard about, said it might be perfect for someone in my situation. They were setting the stage, building toward their pitch, and I let them think they were succeeding. Neil chattered about school, about his friends, about the lizard he'd caught in their backyard. Every innocent word was like a knife in my heart, knowing what was coming. Finally, over coffee and the apple pie Diana used to make every Sunday, Sharon reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her skin was soft, warm, just like when she was little and needed comfort after a nightmare. "Dad," she said, her voice gentle with fake concern, "Trevor and I have been talking. This house is so much work for you to maintain. The yard, the pool, all those repairs. And the property taxes must be enormous. We were wondering if maybe you might consider selling it and moving somewhere more manageable. Somewhere with people your own age, where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance and security." I looked at her hand on mine and remembered teaching her to ride a bike in the driveway outside. I remembered her first day of school, how she'd cried when I dropped her off. I remembered walking her down the aisle at her wedding, how proud it felt, how hopeful about her future. Then I remembered the forged signature on the quitclaim deed. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady, "I've been thinking about that too. In fact, I've been doing quite a bit of thinking about my assets lately." Sharon's eyes brightened. Trevor leaned forward slightly like a hunter who'd spotted prey. "Really?" Sharon said. "That's wonderful, Dad. We only want what's best for you." "I know exactly what you want," I said, and placed a manila folder on the table between us. The change was instant. Sharon's face went pale. Trevor's hand jerked, knocking over his water glass. Ice cubes scattered across Diana's tablecloth like scattered diamonds. I didn't move to clean up the mess. I just watched them. "That folder contains copies of the fraudulent quitclaim deed you filed with Maricopa County," I said, using the same flat professional voice I'd used in depositions for 35 years. "It also contains the bank records showing the $150,000 home equity line you took out in my name, the statements showing where that money went, the Sedona condo, credit card payoffs, the day trading losses, the testimony from Patricia Stone, the notary you hired to witness my forged signature, and the emails between you and the real estate agent planning to sell my house in 3 weeks." Sharon was crying now. Whether from fear or shame, I couldn't tell. Trevor looked like he was calculating. Escape routes, his eyes darting toward the door. "Please don't try to run," I said calmly. "Carl Rodriguez is parked across the street with a federal agent. This is a federal case now. Wire fraud, bank fraud, elder abuse." "Dad," Sharon choked out, "please, you don't understand. We were desperate. Trevor's business failed. We were going to lose everything. I was just trying to protect my family. I was going to pay it all back, I swear." I looked at my daughter, this woman I had loved unconditionally for 43 years, and felt something shift inside me permanently. The father who had held her hand on her first day of school, who had taught her to drive, who had danced with her at her wedding, who had cried with joy when Neil was born. That father was still there. But sitting next to him now was the investigator who had spent a lifetime watching people try to justify their crimes. "You weren't trying to protect your family," I said quietly. "You were trying to steal from it. There's a difference." Neil was crying now, confused and scared by the tension he didn't understand. I picked him up, held him close while Carl and the federal agents came through my front door. I held my grandson while strangers read his parents their rights, while they were handcuffed and led away from the dinner table set with Diana's china. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of their crimes became clear. This wasn't a desperate one-time act. Trevor had been running variations of this scheme for years, targeting elderly relatives and family friends. They'd already defrauded Trevor's aunt in Florida out of $80,000 and were actively planning to target Sharon's cousin in Oregon next. The federal prosecutors offered Trevor a deal if he would testify about the other people involved in his various schemes. He took it without hesitation, throwing Sharon under the bus to save himself. Sharon, faced with the mountain of evidence Carl had assembled, pled guilty to avoid a trial that would have destroyed what was left of her reputation. Sharon was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Trevor got 4 years and permanent disbarment from any financial services work. My house was returned to my legal ownership. The fraudulent liens were removed from my credit reports. Carl's investigation team helped me recover $89,000 through asset seizure when they sold the Sedona condo and liquidated their other assets. It wasn't enough to make me whole financially, but it was justice. And sometimes justice is all you can salvage from the wreckage of a family. Neil lives with Diana's sister now. She'd always been suspicious of Trevor, had seen through his charm from the beginning. She's raising him with the stability and honesty he deserves. I see him every weekend, and we talk about his grandmother, about the woman who would have loved him so fiercely it would have taken his breath away. I don't tell him the truth about his parents yet. He's too young to understand that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. Someday, when he's older, he'll ask questions and I'll answer them honestly. But for now, I let him believe his parents made some bad decisions and are paying the consequences. That's close enough to the truth for a 7-year-old to handle. I still have Wednesday lunches, but now they're with Beverly and Carl, and sometimes Neil when he's not in school. We sit in different restaurants around Phoenix, places without the pretentious farm-to-table menus Sharon preferred. We talk about grandchildren and baseball and the weather, normal things, safe things, the kind of conversations that don't end with handcuffs and federal agents. Sometimes I think about Sharon in her prison cell and feel something I can't quite name. It's not satisfaction, because there's no joy in watching your child destroy her life. It's not grief, because she made her choice with eyes wide open. It's something colder and more permanent, like a scar that's healed but never stops aching when the weather changes. This whole experience taught me something I wish I'd learned without such a painful lesson. Trust is not the same as love. You can love someone completely and still verify what they tell you. You can hold your family close while still protecting yourself from their worst impulses. Unconditional love is a beautiful thing, but unconditional trust is a dangerous one. I also learned that retirement doesn't mean your skills become useless. For 35 years, I investigated fraud and caught people who thought they were smarter than the system. When crime came to my own doorstep, perpetrated by my own blood, those same skills saved everything I'd worked my entire life to build. Some people ask if I regret turning in my own daughter. They say blood should protect her from consequences, that family loyalty should come before justice. To those people, I have a simple answer. She stopped being my daughter the moment she decided I was just an asset to be, liquidated. I owed her my love, and I will always love the little girl she used to be, the one who brought me dandelions from the backyard and called them flowers. But I didn't owe her my house, my security, my silence, or my future. What would you have done in my position? I know my answer now. Sometimes protecting the people you love means protecting them from themselves. Sometimes justice and family loyalty can't coexist in the same space. But I sleep better at night knowing I chose truth over silence, law over blood, the future over the past. That's something Diana would have understood. That's something I can live with. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, not exploit your trust. And those who can't tell the difference have already told you everything you need to know about their character. I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't protecting someone from consequences. It's making sure they face them so they can't destroy anyone else the way they tried to destroy you.